hope I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Kettle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. I'd like to welcome everyone in the chat, especially our good friend Thumper, Thump257, has returned. I'll let him fill you all in if he cares to. There has been some medical problems with his dear father, but things seem to be getting at least a little better. And of course, I'm sure we're all praying for continued health and longevity for Thumper's dad. Thumper just generously re-upped on Trovo for another 3 months, not knowing that we're trying to move away from Trovo and get everybody here on D-Live. I just gave him the link. But God bless him and God bless you all. Folks, I'm going to tell you right now, I can't promise today's show is going to look anything professional. I had a very long doctor's appointment today, a lot to go over. It looks like I'm going to be put on yet another medication. May make things go better around the house, may not. There is a possibility of a fairly serious side effect, and if it kicks in, I have to go to the hospital right away. So if suddenly you see me missing, that may be a reason why. But I hope to have that go away. And I do have good news, though. The new hat is close to arriving. May not be here today, but if not, I'll debut it Monday. Because, of course, Fridays are when I wear the 46 asterisk hat. All right, let's get into it. First off, I'm sure you've... I'm already ahead of myself. Please forgive me. First off, our Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one on the left from their church section. This story will become even more relevant when we get to the after show, by the way. I've got a lot of stuff on the 46 asterisk announcement of the gun control measures he's seeking to enact by executive order. A lot on his pick for the new head of alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. The guy's a nut. We'll get into that. But the early show, the YouTube show, is pretty much a mishmash of things like the bill that's coming up, the $2.25 trillion quote-unquote infrastructure bill, and some other odds and ends. Some pretty serious international stuff at the end of it. All right, now I'm ready to get into it. So, the Babylon Bee bookend, church section. Grace Life members carry horns, begin marching around giant fence outside their church. If you don't know this one, go to the Old Testament and look up Jericho, and you'll get all the information you need. Dateline Edmonton, Alberta. Canadian police and health authorities were nervous after the members of Grace Life Church showed up to protest the forceful closing of their church and the creation of a large fence all around the property. They got even more nervous, however, when the church pulled out a bunch of horns and started marching around the massive fence. Quote, "I feel like I've seen something like this before, maybe in Sunday school," said Health Minister Tyler Shandro. Continuing the quote, "I can't remember what happened in the story, though, or how it ended. I stopped going to church a long time ago." Close quote. The church's pastor, James Coates, told the press that he and his congregation will be marching around the fence for the next 6 days with a, quote, "huge surprise" on the 7th day. Said one Canadian Mountie in between gulps of maple syrup, "This is creepy. I don't want to be here anymore." Close quote. Eventually, local authorities were so weirded out, they just took down the fence and went home. And again, I'll have more on that in the after show to lead things off. All right, my personal conceit, the market. Pretty flat day on the market. The Dow was up a fraction. S&P 500 not quite, up 0.5%. The NASDAQ was the leader, up just a tick over 1%. Gold actually saw a 1% gain. That's the first time it's had that big of a gain in a while. It's up over 17,500 for an ounce for the first time in quite a while. Crude oil had a very, very small drop, still below $60 a barrel for West Sussex Intermediate Sweet Crude. And Bitcoin is showing a rally today. It is up just over, 57,700. And having a good day today. Moving right along. Okay, I've got a couple updates for stories I did yesterday. The first one here in the first half of the show is regarding. Oh, my hat's here. It came early. You're not going to see it till Monday. Just boom, you're not going to see it till Monday. So relax. I have a big thing all planned, a big reveal for it. You'll enjoy it. So anyway, one of the stories I covered yesterday was about a particular individual who is based out of Indianapolis but has a habit of traveling to hotspots like Portland and helping stage Antifa riots. And in case you forgot, this person's name is Malik Muhammad. And he's charged with attempted aggravated murder for allegedly throwing lit Molotov cocktails at police. You've seen the video of one particular one where he actually got a Molotov to go off and it briefly caught an officer's leg on fire. There's also a photo I showed you yesterday of a larger Molotov cocktail in what looks like a beer growler bottle that did not explode, but it was fully capable of doing so, and it was thrown at a police car with officers inside it. But I did not know at the time, but as I just said, Malik is a bit of an Antifa organizer. He was involved in a lot of the riots in Indianapolis, but again, he liked to travel to Portland and cause a bit of a ruckus too. As I understand it now, the charges are up to about 28 felonies on this guy. So good news there. The thing is, though, where are the other arrests? Malik Muhammad wasn't the only guy throwing Molotov cocktails and other explosives at police officers during these riots, especially in Portland. Where are the other arrests? We've got hundreds of people arrested for the Capitol Hill riot, many of them overcharged. Over 100 of them overcharged, if not more. Yet we've seen one high-profile arrest from the hundreds of days of riots last year. So what the hell's going on there? Continuing along. And United Airlines has stepped in it big time. I, for a long time, wanted to be an airline pilot. I have my private pilot certificate. I'm also instrument rated. I never got my commercial rating. I didn't see the need for it. But at one time, I was all hell-bent on going to a professional flight school. I picked one out in Seattle, as a matter of fact, based out of Seattle. You get a lot of IFR time in Seattle, so your rating is very, very worthwhile. And I was prepared to go completely into debt to do it. The thing is, though, I was absolutely just newly married. And the impetuousness of that move did not help cement the relationship at first. It made things pretty rocky. I did back off from it, but I was very close to doing it. Very, very close to doing it. And I've had that dream off and on ever since. But since my medical has lapsed, that has gone out the window. But one of the great air carriers to work for is, of course, United. And United decided just the other day that they needed to announce a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Wokeness. And they put out a tweet along with a video. And the tweet says, "Our flight deck should reflect the diverse group of people on board our planes every day. That's why we plan for 50% of the 5,000 pilots we train in the next decade to be women or people of color. Learn more and apply now." Okay, so in initial reading, that sounds great. Why not? Here's the question. Why aren't there more women and people of color pilots now? The reason is because that's not something they want to get into. This is exactly like women in STEM. The reason there aren't a lot of women engineers is because women don't want to be engineers. Not all of them. The majority of them don't want to be engineers. Yet we get into this kind of blinders that just because the numbers don't reflect the general population, there must be discrimination going on. That's why they're not doing it. That's why women don't want to be engineers, because women are dissuaded from being engineers, which is, of course, a complete lie. That's why black people don't play hockey, because they don't have the opportunity to play hockey. Well, no, it's because they don't want to. They prefer other sports. So what? What does it matter? What matters is skill. What matters is ability, and what matters is drive to perfection. If there's one industry you want to have the absolute best at, other than doctors, it's pilots. Now, I learned to fly pretty quickly. I have an aptitude for it. But here's the thing, and you'll hear this from every pilot. First of all, how much does it take to learn to fly? All of it. Whenever somebody asks you how much money you need, you say all of it, because it's expensive. The United Airlines flight school, which as I understand it, you can't get into until you're commercially rated, costs close to 80 grand a year for 2 years. And they have, supposedly, a program set up for scholarships. Those scholarships are a fraction of the number of people who are accepted every year, an absolute small fraction. So according to United, now they're going to partner with J.P. Morgan Chase to create some kind of a fund for these minorities. For even though women aren't minorities, they are the majority of the population by a couple percent. But so what? So what? So the question was asked, this article from the Post Millennial, God bless them, they do a bunch of Twitter reporting, which I don't like, but there were a couple good ones in there. And people asked a few questions of United on Twitter after they posted this. One of them being, so you guys have been discriminating against women minorities up to now? Which is a perfectly valid question. If you're saying from now on you want to promote women and minorities in the cockpit, that means that you weren't before. Which means you were discriminating. That's according to your own words. If you're changing your policy now, that means your policy was discriminatory before. Dad Sad had a great tweet. He said, you know what the problem is? There are no blind pilots. He said, it's this kind of ableism that has restricted a very, very discriminated against portion of our population against being able to fly. And that needs to be changed. I loved it. That was perfect. That was perfect. But United has absolutely stepped in it. Where has the American dream of meritocracy gone? That was this company was built upon. The drive and the ability to make something of yourself. And suddenly it's become, what color are you? What's between your legs? Who cares what anything your pilot is? Pilots don't even talk to you. Sometimes they'll stand at the front of the airplane and shake your hand as you get off. Sometimes. But usually they're too busy going after their parking checklist to come out of the cockpit. And God bless them. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do before you fly. There's a lot to do during your flight. And there's a lot to do after you fly. All in the name of safety. And I don't give a good damn what the pilot looks like. I want them to be the best. Now, United's probably looking at some EEOC lawsuits because of this. Because this is obvious discrimination against white men. If you're a white man in this country, and especially if you're a white Christian, you're out of luck. They're coming after you hammer and tongs. So let's see how far United gets with this. Okay, I teased this story in the thumbnail for YouTube. Remember how when Trump was president, we heard over and over again Emoluments clause, that he was making money, he was becoming rich while being president by having heads of state stay at Trump Hotel in D.C., and therefore he was raking in the millions through room fees, as if. You'll remember that last year when the stimulus bill came out, when the rescue bill came out for COVID shutdowns, the hospitality industry was near the top of the list because hotels lost tons of money because they couldn't get people in their rooms because people weren't allowed to travel. And hotels didn't have the kind of social distancing protocols that were put in place later to enable them to have high occupancy. So they were given, and I think rightfully so, a bunch of money to help allay those loss of profits and to keep their people on staff. You may be aware that the governor of Illinois, Pritzker, is the scion of the Hyatt hotel chain. He is a billionaire. And the Hyatt hotel chain got millions and millions of dollars from those funds to allay losses. Hey, that's what the money was there for. Fine. Okay. Trump didn't get a dime. His properties did not see one dime of that money because they were Trump. So the governor of Illinois, no problem. But the president of the United States, because he's Donald Trump, you don't see a penny. Screw the people who work for you. They're out of luck because you're president. That's how insane the Democrats are. But we heard over and over again the Emoluments clause. They even tried taking him to court several times. A number of people tried to sue in federal court over the Emoluments clause, that the president was making money because he was president. Now, I saw this story actually a couple days ago, but I finally had time to cover it. This is from Fox Business by Brittany D'Elia. Donald Trump's net worth dropped by 1/3 during his presidency. According to Forbes magazine, Trump's net worth declined by more than $1 billion since 2017. That's billion with a B, folks. Now, Trump has said he's worth more than that. I'm not going to argue the point. I'm not his tax accountant. I don't care. But no matter what, he lost $1 billion according to Forbes. Not necessarily the most Trump popular magazine in the country. So, what the hell? Where are the Democrats now? I'll tell you where they are. They're lying and cheating and pretending they never said any of that to begin with. Every scandal they threw at Trump, every one was proven to be false. Every one. And name one thing he did that's as bad or worse than what Biden has done to the border. Trump fixed the border, and Biden destroyed it. Mayorkas is talking about building the wall again because CBP has been screaming. They're pouring through the gaps that you guys didn't finish. We can't cover the holes. I've got a story in the after show, about sexual assault and other crimes happening at the Freeman Coliseum UAC Center in San Antonio. Trump at most had about 2,600 kids in federal custody, either through CBP or HHS, during the height of the border crisis in 2019. Biden right now has over 18,000, and the number grows every day. I covered the story yesterday of a young boy who was left behind by a group trekking through the Texas desert, trying to get into the country. He spent the entire night, at least one night, alone in the desert. No food, no water, no shelter. If it hadn't been for a CBP officer patrolling that area, and that kid having the brains to stick to a road, he would have died in the desert and probably never would have found his bones. That's Biden's fault. That is directly Biden's fault. So I'm tired of hearing about how Trump ruined this country. Tired of it. It was a lie to begin with, and it's a lie still. I'm not putting up with it, neither should you.
1963.
Oops.
This was a...
Sorry, that launched automatically. All right, I have some video to play for you. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but you need to see this. This is from Kathy Barnett. Let me advance to where there's a little bit of video so you're not looking at a black screen. Hang on just a second. There we go. Kathy Barnett, that's one N, two T's, with a K, K with a cat, Kathy with a K, is running for the U.S. Senate out of Pennsylvania. God bless her. Kathy is a black woman, a conservative through and through, and she has a great idea for her campaign. She's running on the fact that Biden and the Democrats are trying to steal the identity of blacks away from any of them who are conservatives. I mean, you remember Biden's famous comment to, what's his name? Something the God, Cedric the God, whatever his name is, the radio podcast host, who, when he's at the end of an interview with Biden during the campaign, the guy said, I've got a lot more questions for you. And Biden said, yeah, more questions. Well, let me tell you one thing. If you can't decide whether to vote for Trump or me, then you ain't black. If Trump had said that, they would have drug him out of the White House and set him on fire. But Biden got elected, supposedly, president. That's what they're telling me. So Kathy Barnett has come out swinging. And she has a great hook. She references the Battle of Gettysburg. Probably the most famous battle in the entire Civil War. If you're any kind of a Civil War buff, you've read about Gettysburg time and time again. One of the big failings in my life is I have not been to the battlefield yet. I plan to. Hopefully this summer, perhaps. Picasso's and I will be able to take some time off and go there. There are a number of excellent books. The best, in my opinion, is called The Killer Angels. I get shivers just thinking about it. It's one of the best books, really, ever, and especially on the Civil War. And I'm comparing that to Shelby Foote's trilogy, which I've read also. But there's also some really good movies. In fact, there is a movie called Gettysburg that is excellent. The only problem I have with that movie is the repetition of the music. For the battle scenes, they use the same theme with slight variations, and it gets really tedious if you're into music and you notice those kind of things. But anyway, let's get back to Kathy Barnett. She has a great ad kicking off her Senate campaign, and I'm going to play you a little bit of it.
In 1863, this was a battlefield where a clash for freedom was fought. The Emancipation Proclamation gave more than 3 million blacks their freedom. But in the decades that followed, people who looked like me could not fully integrate into the fabric of this nation. We couldn't even register to vote. Today, not only can I now vote without fear of violence, but I can run for office too. But there are still deeply personal and demeaning hurdles we must overcome. Because now the issue isn't just for someone who looks like me, but it's for people who think like me as well. People who think like me are being canceled, bullied, fired, threatened, and deplatformed. We're told that Black Lives Matter, except of course my Black life, because I'm a Black conservative. Radicals want to control and strip not just Black conservatives, but all conservatives of our identity, because we dare to think for ourselves.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't Black.
The white man that sits at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue believes he has the power to take away my Blackness because I'm a conservative. But I will keep on. I will never let the words of another define me or determine my value.
I'll stop it there. Pardon the phone. I didn't turn the ringer off. So there's more. There's another about a minute and a half, 15 seconds. But it's really worth your time to watch. In case you care to, there is a campaign fund site set up, Barnett for Senate. And again, that's one R, one N, and two T's. Kathy Barnett with a K. So check it out. Check it out. Picasso Knows and I sent her a handful of dollars earlier today, and we bless her and bless her campaign. Let's see how far she gets. Okay. The story that won't go away, Hunter, his laptop, and Burisma. We all know, being with this channel, you know pretty well what's going on. Oh, by the way, again, hey, Stevie Bananas in the YouTube chat. Stevie correctly points out that Gettysburg was a war of attrition. Absolutely. The only real, let me divert for just a second. In my opinion, the only real military coup at Gettysburg was Chamberlain's wheel right at the Battle for Little Round Top. That was the one move that really sealed Gettysburg. You could point to the failures of the Confederates to take the high ground when they first arrived at Gettysburg. There's a lot of conversation about how that could have or should have happened. I don't really have an opinion on that. But really, Joshua Chamberlain, that was really, I tear up just thinking about it. That was really the turning point at Gettysburg, in my opinion. But he became a national hero. He served, I believe, in the Senate for quite a long time, and he became governor as well. So anyway, back to Hunter Burisma and the laptop from hell. It seems, according to this article from the National Pulse by Mike McCormick, that there's some electronic evidence that Hunter met with his father and his business partner, Devin Archer, who was also on the board of Burisma, at the White House. It says here, unearthed emails place Hunter Biden at West Wing meeting with then VP Biden and Burisma board partner Devin Archer. So, this email, as you can see on the screen here, there is a, let's see here, let me find exactly what I want. The line, I thought it was in this picture. Again, I did not do this show as well as I would have. I spent so much time with the doctor. But what we have here is the line item of the email itself, dated April 15th, 2014, reads, and I'm quoting, 11:15 a.m., meet Devin and Luke at Pete's Coffee and head to White House. And then parentheses, Jamie Lyons is, and there are several pound signs if anything comes up. And that obviously, in my opinion, reads, Jamie Lyons is effed if anything comes up. And continuing with the article, Lyons at the time was an assistant to Joe Biden's chief of staff, Steve Ricchetti, which indicates attention by the vice president himself into the visit of the two soon-to-be Burisma board members. Significantly, this April 16th meeting occurred only 5 days before Joe Biden took his second VP trip to Ukraine to deliver a substantial package of assistance to Ukraine, including energy security, some of which directly benefited the company, Burisma, which would simultaneously start fattening his son's wallet. Obama White House visitors logs dated April 16, 2014, and reviewed by the National Pulse confirm Hunter Biden's business partner, Devin Archer, and his son, Luke Archer, were indeed admitted to the West Wing at 11:30 a.m. to meet the vice president. As a family member, Hunter Biden would have been able to access the White House without having a visitor's appointment, so his name would not appear in the visitor logs. To this date, it is unclear if he was part of the meeting. This newly published email is the first traceable evidence that Hunter Biden was also present at his business partner's West Wing meeting with his father, and it potentially refutes Joe Biden's assertion that he knew nothing of Hunter's business in Ukraine. If anything, this looks more like a planning meeting for three. And there's more. There's a lot more. Go to the National Pulse. This was published yesterday. It's a very good article. And just see what happens. Well, let's see what happens. I'm not going to make any predictions. This certainly won't get picked up by the mainstream media. But and more, the mainstream media is being bypassed by folks like us. We're gaining new followers here every day. I'm up to, I think, 266 now on DLive. So all is good. But it's a thing. It's a thing. So let's touch briefly on the quote-unquote infrastructure plan. The $2.25 trillion, and that's only what they're talking about, dollar plan. That at best estimate, if you give them everything possibly related to things that could even conceivably be considered infrastructure, like broadband across the country, this bill is about 36 to 38% infrastructure. The rest is giveaways to quote-unquote green energy corporations, pie-in-the-sky home remodeling, sustainable homes, low-income housing, things like that. None of it's going to happen. But they're going to allocate the money anyway, and it's going to get spent. And it's going to create a huge hole in the economy. Once again, the Republicans are saying, look, we can narrow this down to a fraction of what you're proposing and do everything we need to do to upgrade our infrastructure to be world-class again. But the Democrats will have none of it. They want their giveaways. They want their pork. They want their fat butts sitting in the trough, sucking up dollars. I know that paints a bad picture, but that's where I am. Now, in this Fox Business article by Megan Henney, this plan is going to raise taxes by $2.1 trillion. You'll know that they're talking about raising the corporate tax to 28% from Trump's cut to 21%. It was 35% under Obama, and we saw how well that worked for the economy. The longest recovery in history. And it wasn't even a recovery. It was just mediocre, not even mediocre growth, pathetic growth for 8 years. Trump came in office, and he tripled that growth in 18 months. Wages skyrocketed. Wages went up more for the lower class, the lower quarter earners. Wages went up more for them in 1 year than in 8 years under Obama and Biden. And then COVID hit. And now we're spending money like drunken sailors. No offense to you Navy guys. But this measure will cost about $2.7 trillion in extra costs and lost GDP. And it's only going to raise $2.1 trillion. And that's if this all holds together between now and when this thing is supposed to really kick in, which should be as late as 2018. And this article also states that this plan, again, if it stays in effect, could actually slash GDP by just under 1% in 2050. when we start really paying the piper. And this article doesn't even talk about inflation, which is guaranteed. We're already seeing prices go up almost a quarter over what they were this time last year. Gas prices are up a good 25%. I know you guys are paying more at the grocery store than you were just a few months ago. And it's only going to get worse because the supply lines still aren't all back in effect yet. So that's what we're looking at. Now there is a bit of realism out there. There are some people trying to get their voices heard and to get this administration to realize they are completely on the wrong path. And one of them is a person named Jamie, I believe it's pronounced Dimon. This is an article from CNBC by Robert Frank. And Jamie Dimon was at one point the JP Morgan Chase CEO. So he knows a little bit about business. And in this article, they point out that this bill would create carve-outs and loopholes in the tax code that are special interest positive, not American consumer positive. And so the long-term benefits of this are not going to help. And in this article, Dimon also points out state and local taxes and how heavily they hit businesses. And just look at New York State and California. Look at those two. Elon Musk pulled out of California. I think he had the largest auto manufacturing plant California had ever seen, and he walked away and set up a big truck plant in Texas. A huge plant in Texas. And New York has been hemorrhaging businesses for long, long periods of time. And you remember Rush Limbaugh's famous stand-up to New York taxes when he finally got fed up having to pay half of his income tax, half of his income, I should say, to New York State, even though he lived half of the year in Florida because of the time he worked in New York when his radio show, when he did it out of the WABC studios in Manhattan. And he finally got fed up with it, and he left that studio, which had been his home for some time, and created the Southern Command in South Florida, where he broadcast to the end of his days. And that was the first really big screw you New York story. That was easy to say. And it just cascaded from there. Florida is absolutely inundated with people wanting to set up new businesses there. People moving from New York. People leaving New Jersey, too. New Jersey has insane taxes. And so what are these states doing? Well, California's quickly going bankrupt. They're way underwater, and they have no way to get back unless there are serious cuts in things like public sector pensions. California may wind up defaulting on all those pensions. In fact, if I would go back into the prediction business, I'd say it's guaranteed they will default on those pensions at one point. And New York is talking about raising taxes on millionaires and raising the New York City tax too. Because you remember, New York, you not only pay New York State tax, but if you live in the city, you pay a city tax too. So Jamie Dimon's got some good ideas here. Let's see what happens. But you guys know I like to touch on censorship whenever I can. And I will say right off the bat, I am not a regular Joe Rogan listener. I have nothing against Joe Rogan, but I just don't have the time. I consume news, honestly, from the moment I get up to when I go to bed. Except for about the 2 hours when I play The Witcher. And by the way, I completed the main Witcher campaign yesterday. Now I played an add-on campaign just a second ago. Or I should say this morning, pardon me. I may or may not continue. I think I'm looking forward to going to The Witcher 2, which I'm going to check and see, because if I can start casting it, then I'll start casting Witcher 2 on Trovo and DLive starting next Monday. Do that in the mornings like I used to do for Witcher 3 before I switched over. So look forward to that, folks. Probably starting 8 or 8:30 Eastern, and playing for about 2 hours. So we'll see what happens. But again, I don't have time for Joe Rogan. I'm sorry. God love him. I've heard some of his stuff, and it's great. But he signed $100 million exclusive deal with the podcast giant podcast, or pardon me, Spotify last year. Joe Rogan also left California for Austin, Texas. He has a beautiful home there now. And one of the things that came out when Joe Rogan signed the contract was supposedly all of his shows were going to transfer over to Spotify. And then there was this leak from the Spotify employees, all the woketarians at Spotify, who said that they didn't want to work with Rogan because he was phobic. You know, blah, 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 phobic, blah, 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 phobic, blah, 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 phobic. Anistic and anismic and all that crap. And they demanded that he be censored. And Rogan stood his ground, and supposedly that wasn't going to happen. Now, you remember all this stuff used to be on YouTube, and then there's only clips available on YouTube now, except for, I think, maybe the odd full show. But I don't look, so I can't say for sure. But it turns out Spotify is, in fact, censoring podcasts from Joe Rogan, past podcasts. And according to this article from Breitbart, it's up to 42 episodes at this point in time, and there are probably going to be more. This is written by Lucas Nolan. And it says here, 42 episodes have now been censored by the platform, with reports indicating more episodes are likely to disappear. Some censored episodes appear to have been targeted based on jokes. Let me read one podcast in particular that's highlighted by an outlet called Digital Music News. And they're talking about one of the episodes that's been pulled is episode 411 with Bulletproof Coffee founder Dave Asprey. Spotify has deleted 3 episodes with Asprey for reasons that are entirely clear. Now, Asprey has some out there ideas, which makes him perfect for the Joe Rogan podcast. Asprey believes that his coffee is very, very healthy, while others are not. He blames that on other blends having a high level of mycotoxins in them. And mycotoxins, in case you're unaware, are poisons developed by mushrooms. Pardon me, by funguses. Fungi. Funguses or fungi? I think it's fungi. But, obviously that's a problem when you store coffee beans because they're moist initially, and so mold likes to grow in conditions like that. And according to Dave Asprey, other blends don't remove those mycotoxins as well as his company does. So he believes that there's actually something called the bulletproof diet. And if you follow it, Asprey believes he'll live to 180. 180. Okay, fine. So what? Spotify. These episodes are gone now. I'm sure. Oh, the Trovo chat is gone. Excuse me just a second. I can fix it in just a moment. Nobody's there, it looks like, but still I do like to keep things open. That's the second time Trovo chat crashed on me today. There, oops. It blew up on me. Hang on just a second. Quality live programming here on the Daily All Hat No Cattle News Radio, as always. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, those episodes are gone. They've also removed a episode called Live from the Ice House with Little Esther, Al Madrigal, Josh McDermott, Brendan Walsh, Felicia Michaels, and Brian Redband. All comedians. Supposedly a lot of raunchy jokes during that recording. But so what? And it goes on and on and on. Chris D'Elia. He's, I guess, been accused of sexual misconduct by some women. Those 4 episodes are gone. And, of course, the episodes with Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos have been pulled some time ago and are basically impossible to find. But who are we to judge? Who are we to judge? Oops, I didn't close the comments. Some good news out of this administration. They're actually trying to hold China accountable in a small way, at least, but still they're trying. And I'll just touch on this very briefly because the names of these companies are impossible to pronounce. But today, the 46 asterisk administration added a bunch of Chinese supercomputing entities to the blacklist for trade. So you can't do business with these people anymore. And again, there's the list is long and unpronounceable, but you can certainly check it out. This article is from Reuters. It appeared on the Epoch Times today. It does say the Commerce Department said the 7 were, quote, involved with building supercomputers used by China's military actors, its destabilizing military modernization efforts, and or weapons of mass destruction programs. This is the first time the Biden administration has taken action to penalize Chinese companies on national security grounds. So, we'll have to see. The new rules don't take effect immediately. Pardon me, I read that wrong. The new rules take effect immediately, but don't apply to goods from U.S. suppliers already en route. All right, so take the little wins, guys, because that's all we're going to get for a long time. Take the little wins. Quoting Stevie Bananas in the YouTube chat, GE owns General Electric owns NBC, and China tried buying it, but was stopped when Nancy Pelosi was busted trying to make the deal. That's all our technology up for sale. Yeah, absolutely, Stevie Bananas, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to find being in bed with China, as far as business is concerned, Nancy Pelosi is a great place to start. So's what's her name? Dianne Feinstein. She's been in bed with China for a long time, and let's not even count the 10 years she had a Chinese spy as her driver. Let's not even go there, because certainly the feds didn't. That got swept under the rug big time, just like what's that idiot's name? Eric Swalwell and his affair. Sexual or not, we don't know. We don't know. Can't say for sure. But he certainly had an affair with Fang Fang, the Chinese spy, who helped bundle campaign donations to his House run when he won in California, and was able to get a couple interns into his office. But again, who are we to judge? Now, as I said, take the little wins, because the absolute disasters are not done, and I don't think they'll ever be done, at least until the new House and Senate take over in January of 2023. We can all pray for that. So far, things are looking good. If we can keep getting candidates like Kathy Barnett to step up to the plate, things are looking really good for this country. But one of the problems we knew we were going to have when this administration took office was that they were going to be soft on the Arabs, and they're going to be hard on Israel. And we went over yesterday that they're already leaking, 46 asterisk, his department is already leaking stuff about Israel that will hurt their ability to remain secure in the area, giving away secret missions that the Israelis have done to protect their country, thereby creating tension with them and Iran, thereby making Iran the aggrieved party, and making Israel look like the offenders. And the other thing we knew was going to happen, which just did happen, is that the quote-unquote humanitarian aid that we'd been giving I hate to use the term, but it's what's in the article. The Palestinians. There's no such thing. They're Arabs. No such thing as Palestinians. There's no such thing as Palestine. Palestine was a word made up by the Romans because they didn't want to keep referring to the area that they had conquered as Judea. So they made up calling it Palestine. And sure enough, this administration is going to start restoring quote-unquote humanitarian and economic development aid for the quote-unquote Palestinians. Got this article again from CNBC by Christian Nunley and Amanda Macias. The aid package includes $75 million in economic and development assistance in the West Bank and Gaza, $10 million for peace-building programs through the USAID, and $150 million in humanitarian assistance under the UN. And of course, we all know the Hezbollah and Hamas who run the West Bank, who run Gaza. We know that they are very good at using the money they get from international agencies to bolster the economy. And of course, the economy in this area consists of paying families of terrorists who attack Israelis pensions and commissions. If you're the family of one of these Arabs who goes into Israel and attacks Israelis, you get a pension. And if they manage to kill an Israeli, they'll pay for your house. That is where our humanitarian and economic aid goes to when we pay terrorists. Trump was right. Cut this funding off at the knees. Because all they're doing is buying missiles. I should say rockets. They're buying rockets and making firebombs that they can float over the wall and burn and set Israeli farms afire. That's where that money goes. But again, who are we to judge? All right, some international news continuing. I have not covered Burma, also known as Myanmar, for a few weeks now. And it's been getting horrible. It's getting worse and worse and worse. I've been seeing stories over and over again about the military forces opening fire on demonstrators with live rounds and killing people left and right. And it hasn't stopped yet. Yesterday, and I've got this article from Reuters via the National Post, Myanmar security forces kill 15 protesters. Junta leader says opposition aims to destroy country. These are pro-democracy demonstrators, folks. You remember, the military took over Myanmar because they didn't like the way the last election went. The president of that country, Burma, Myanmar, whichever you prefer, won the Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts to stand up to the military junta that had been running Burma for decades. She succeeded in getting her pro-democracy movement to the fore and was duly elected president. And when she was reelected, the military said, no, we don't believe this election was fair, and we're taking over. And they started killing people. So that was 15 people just recently. Let me see if I can find the newest. And this is not occurring just in cities. They're doing it in rural areas. They're doing it in towns. It is happening all over the country. Oh, by the way, if I can find the death toll, let me look for that real quickly. Yes, the AAPP said that as of Wednesday, 598 people had been killed by security forces since the coup February 1st. The authorities are also holding 2,847 people in detention. And of course, among those detained are Suu Kyi and leading figures for her National League for Democracy Party, who won the election back in November. And it's not going to get better. This is probably going to take a military a firing war. It's going to take a shooting war to get the military out of there. So just throwing humanitarian aid at this country right now isn't going to do a thing. This is full-on revolution here. And I don't know what's going to happen. I do know one thing, though. China seems to be backing the military here. And the locals notice and are taking it out. China has a lot of factories in Burma, owned or run. And they're getting burned down. About 35 of them have been set fire so far. So not good. Also, another area of very big concern is Ukraine. I covered this the other day. Russia has been amassing forces on the Ukrainian-Russian border, and I should say the Crimean border, where there has been shooting war with very tentative ceasefires for some time now. Russia is amassing troops and arms along the border. They say it's because of threats to their security. Funny, because the Ukrainian military has not threatened to overrun those Russian and ethnic Russian Ukrainian outposts at all. Again, there's been sporadic fire. You can blame that on trigger-happy or bunker mentality soldiers, both sides, I'm sure. But Russia's digging in. I've got some video. This is the captions, near as I can tell, are in Ukrainian, but this is just from 2 days ago. And this is what appears to be a Russian convoy traveling to the area. And this car is going to pass a lot of big military trucks. And near as I can tell, most of these are trucks full of material. So we're talking ammunition, building supplies, things like that. You're going to see an excavator on one of these trucks. And excavators are used to dig in for fortified positions, including embedding artillery and setting up tank revetments. So there's a lot happening here. Let me play this video for you. Sorry, let me cut the audio. I forgot there's actual Ukrainian rap music playing in the background. Here we go. So you can see driving along a major highway or interstate, whatever they call them in Ukraine. Already passed one big truck. There's a dually. Another military truck. There's a fuel truck. There's another fuel truck. That looks like an ammo truck. Another ammo truck. Coming up again. There's the excavator. There's another ammo truck. Another ammo truck. Another. And there's a police escort. That's what's going on in Ukraine. And we haven't said a word. I have not heard one word from this administration on what's going on in Ukraine. The only good news I've heard so far is that the Ukrainian president is getting the same one who was supposedly being threatened by Trump in order to start an investigation into Biden and the Bidens, I should say, regarding Burisma and the firing of the prosecutor. That president, he has been trying to gather international support for a push to get the Russians out of Crimea. And so far, there's been some warming to that. The UK says they're fully behind it. Turkey is also saying they'll back him, believe it or not. But so far, it's more of a conversation than an actual plan. But Ukraine has done nothing to threaten Russia. So this is getting worse and worse. All right, last thing for the YouTube block, and then we'll move on to the after show on DLive and Trovo. So Stevie Bananas will be leaving you, but do feel free to join us. As you can see in the pinned comment at the top of the YouTube chat, that is the link to the DLive. DLive has a great chat service, lots of cool amenities aside from just text. It also has a really cool microtransaction process. And I can't promise when it'll happen, but perhaps today I'll be able to hand some of those grand lemons back to the good folks on DLive. So please consider joining us. You get the whole show, and I'm able to open up a lot more on DLive and Trovo than I am on YouTube. So please consider joining us. But the last thing for the YouTube block is the latest fighter for the Air Force is an old fighter with an upgrade, and that is the F-15EX. They're starting to take delivery on them. It's a Boeing aircraft. It has enhanced munition systems, including being able to carry standoff weapons, which means you can fire from a long distance away, not be subjected to enemy anti-aircraft systems like artillery and anti-aircraft artillery and guided missiles. So it sounds good on paper, but first of all, two problems. A minor problem, they're calling it the Eagle II. I am fed up with the Air Force not being able to come up with new names for their jets. The great workhorse of the Vietnam War was the Phantom II, the F-4. My brother was a seat puller on the D models at Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin, Texas. The Phantom II. And now we've got the Eagle II. They do it over and over again. It's driving me crazy. The Great Britain keeps coming up with new names for their fighters up to a certain point, although they did just reuse Typhoon and Tempest. So I guess I should maybe be mad at them too. Maybe I was wrong about that. But the other problem with the F-15EX, the Eagle II, is that it's a fourth generation fighter, which means it can do certain things, but in a high threat environment, like with the new Russian-made S-400 surface-to-air anti-aircraft missiles, and they're coming up with the S-500 soon, those systems are lethal to anything that paints a decent radar picture, and they can engage you from miles and miles away. I mean, those things can reach out and touch you. And the F-15 has the radar signature of a Walmart. I mean, if you look at this picture, let me blow it up for you. The wings are massive. They're swept a little bit. You can see the huge intakes for the jet engines. Those are massive radar reflectors. And then, of course, the signature twin tail for the Eagle. Those are absolutely the worst thing possible if you want to reduce your radar signature. The worst thing possible. This aircraft is a flying target for modern anti-aircraft systems. Now, if you have the ability to suppress those systems, the F-15 is incredible. It has pretty much the only perfect kill ratio of any jet. F-15s are something like 115 to 0 when it comes to air-to-air kills. The numbers could be a little off, but the 0 is correct. There's never been one F-15 shot down in enemy action. Never. I'm personally an F-16 fan, part of the fighter mafia, but that's me. But we have to knock all those batteries out first. And S-400s are mobile. They can move around and set up within minutes. So, I don't know. I think it's a boondoggle. I don't think it's going to work. But that's where your money's going, folks. What are you going to do? All right. That's enough for YouTube. I will see you guys tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. And please take care of yourselves. Real quickly, let me put up again the URL for the DLive channel. It is dlive.tv/AHNC. Short for All Hat No Cattle, of course. Please feel free to join us and enjoy yourselves with the lemons and the beautiful stickers that you can use in the chat. It's a lot of fun. Let me quote number 257 in the chat real quickly. Regarding the F-15, he says, yeah, it was very good in the day, but it's older technology. We really needed to keep the F-22. Absolutely. Absolutely. We need the F-22. It is an absolute disaster that we stopped producing those. That is the best jet the U.S. military has ever seen, by far. By far. Big time with you there, Thumper. Okay, Laura, thank you. Appreciate it. Stevie, by the way, there is a, there's also, I should have mentioned, there is also a DLive app. Thank you for mentioning that, Laura. There is a DLive app. It works perfectly on Android and Apple phones. It's very robust. I love it. You can do a lot with it. So again, just go to your favorite app store and look for DLive, D-L-I-V-E, DLive, and boom, download it and have a lot of fun. All right, YouTube, I'll see you. Bye-bye.